Hello, everybody. We've got a fantastic series coming up for you. There's two main things I've focused on in my career, probably more than two, but one is individual mood problems like depression and anxiety and inadequacy and shame and guilt and inferiority and hopelessness. And I've developed tremendous high-speed techniques for helping you get over those feelings, helping you change the way you feel. But that's maybe half of the world's suffering is in the form of depression and anxiety. And almost everybody struggles with them. But the other half of the world's problems, we also struggle in that area. And that has to do with relationships and getting into conflicts with people and not knowing how to find loving relationships. And so this is going to be a series for those of you who want to get more love in your lives and learn how to master relationships and to get really close to other people, not only the people you care about, but also sometimes the people you don't care about, how to connect with them as well. But on the internet, you see a lot of kind of gurus promoting quick fixes for this, that, and the other thing, sensationalism. And so I'm going to promote a slow fix. It's no quick fix at all. It's magical, but something that's difficult and challenging to learn, but gives you unbelievable rewards if you're willing to commit yourself to it. Now, rather than promoting myself as an expert, although some people view me as an expert, and I think I've developed quite a lot of expertise in different areas and a few specialized areas. But one of them is relationships, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with other people, how to get close to people. But I've had to teach myself. My wife is a brilliant psychologist, and she recently said she thinks maybe I'm kind of myself on the autistic spectrum. And it shocked me at first, but it might be true because I've had to learn about emotions and relationships and teach myself how to do this. And one of my early teachers was very unexpected, a young man named Sterling Morey. And here's how it came about. I had started my private practice in Philadelphia. I didn't want to stay on, I had a tenure track position to stay on the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, on the faculty. I had a grant from the federal government to develop a brain chemistry research laboratory at the university. But I didn't want to do it. My research had pretty much shown convincingly that the whole chemical imbalance theory of depression was spurious. It wasn't correct. And I'd gotten very interested in cognitive therapy, which said that negative thoughts cause depression, not a chemical imbalance in the brain. And our recent research has confirmed that that appears to be correct. So I started out, and I was very excited about cognitive therapy, and I developed all these methods for helping people defeat their negative thoughts, like I'm a loser and I'm not good enough and I shouldn't have screwed up. And if you've ever felt depressed or anxious, I'm sure you've felt that way. And one day, Dr. Beck, his new clinic, we'd created cognitive therapy, or he'd created it, but I was helping to create many new techniques. He had a center for cognitive therapy on the fifth floor, and I had my new clinical office on the third floor of the Girard Bank building, right across the street from the University of Pennsylvania. And one day he called me and he says, David, I've got a problem and I need your help. He said, I gave a lecture in London at the Maudsley, and afterwards, a medical student, Sterling Morey, came up to me and said he was all excited about my lecture and wanted to learn about cognitive therapy. And for his rotation in psychiatry, which was a month, could he spend that in Philadelphia at my center? And I said, sure, come on over anytime. We'd love to have you. And he just showed up this morning from England. But I forgot all about it, and we don't have a program for him. Oh. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do with him. And I told him he could probably sit in with you for the month while you're seeing your patients. And that way he could observe you and learn how to do cognitive therapy. And I was totally shocked because I knew these were private practice patients. They were paying me like $125 an hour to talk to them. And they would not want a medical student from England sitting in watching things. It violates the whole idea of private practice and confidentiality. But I didn't want to let back down. So I said to him, well, I don't know how much I could offer, but maybe he could sit in for 1 or 2 sessions. And then if the patients didn't like it, that I couldn't offer more, but at least, he could do that. And Beck said, that's fine. I'll send him right down to your office. And so he got on the elevator, and 3 minutes later, he was there in my office, ready for this training in cognitive therapy. And he told me that he was very insecure. He was a very likable but meek fellow. He wasn't like real aggressive or assertive or charismatic or something, very shy and retiring. And he said that he'd never had any psychology classes in college, and he hadn't had any psychiatry rotations in medical school, so he didn't know anything at all. And he wanted to sit in a corner in the office and watch so that he wouldn't have to, say anything and have the patient find out he didn't know anything. And I said, Sterling, that feels very awkward to me. And I think we can sit in three, like, are these 2 chairs and a third, like that. But don't worry, I'll carry the thing along. I won't put any pressure on you to do anything, but I think that'll be more comfortable for the patient. And so he reluctantly agreed to that. And the next patient was a very sad and tragic young man who was a student at the University of Pennsylvania, and he had been writing the word death on his dormitory door. Wow. And screaming in the middle of the night. And the students were afraid of him, and he had been referred by the authorities for somebody to figure out what's going on. Well, the poor fellow had paranoid schizophrenia. It's a very severe case. And he was hallucinating pretty much constantly. And he thought that his thoughts were being broadcasted across loudspeakers on the campus, and that all the students could hear his sexual thoughts and sexual fantasies. And so he was very angry about that. And I had been working with him and prescribed, a neuroleptic medication for the schizophrenia, but I wasn't making any progress with him at all. I was totally stuck. And so I said to him that this is Sterling Morey. He's a medical student from London, and he's going to be here for the month. And would it be okay if he sits in on our therapy session today? And instead of being unhappy about it, the student, we call him Peter, that wasn't his actual name, just to disguise his identity. But Peter got very excited, and he thought that Sterling Morey was an expert sent from London to help him. That's the way he interpreted it. So he was very excited that Sterling was going to be in our session. And so when we went in and sat down, the Peter started pounding like on the desk, and he seemed very agitated and angry. And he says, Dr. Burns, on the way to the office today, I went past the Episcopal Church, and the door was open. Yes, it was open because somebody wanted me to look in. No. And I walked up and looked in the door, and there I saw John the Baptist. And he was sent from heaven as a special messenger with spiritual messages about the spiritual future of the human race. And I realized that I was ordained by God to receive these messages from John the Baptist. So I went up and I kneeled on the floor, and John the Baptist started telling me these secrets. Well, the minister got angry, and the minister called the police. And I was evicted from the Episcopal Church, and there's a conspiracy to prevent me from seeing John the Baptist. And I want to know what you're going to do about it, Dr. Burns. And then he was pounding on the desk again. And this is how the sessions had been going. It wasn't exactly, therapeutic success. And so I turned to Sterling, as I sometimes turn to you, and I said, Sterling, when I was thinking, I know you're not taking your medications, I'm going to have to raise the dose. That was how I was trained to think about people with schizophrenia. It's a very sad, it's one of the most horrible disorders you can have. It's tragic for the patient, for the families. And, uh, and so I said to Sterling, can you tell me, Sterling, what would be the British approach? And Peter looked expectantly at Sterling and was like, what's this wise person from London going to say? And Sterling's eyes started spinning in his sockets, and he looked like a deer caught in the headlights at night. He was in a panic, and 30 seconds went by with total silence, and the fellow kept leaning forward. What is Sterling gonna say?
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and then Sterling leaned toward him and said, well, you know, Peter, in England, we're very interested in religion. And I even took a religion class in college. And if John the Baptist had secrets about the spiritual future of the human race, I'd want to know what was he telling you? I'm fascinated by what you just said.
Oh.
And Peter said, do you really want to know? And Sterling said, yes, I'm dying to find out. What did John the Baptist tell you? And they started getting involved in this intense dialogue for about 20, 25 minutes talking about religion. And I was completely excluded from the conversation. But then about halfway through, the fellow Peter turned to me and said, "Oh, Dr. Burns, thank you for bringing Sterling. This is a fabulously helpful session." And I was thinking, fabulously helpful. What's he doing? What's helping? And then he turned back to Sterling and said, well, you helped me so much on that John the Baptist problem. Can you help me with another problem? And Sterling said, oh, yeah, I can help you with anything. What is it? And he said, well, I'm horny all the time. and so Sterling said, well, why is that a problem for you? And then he said, and he became tearful, and he said, well, I don't know how to relate to other kids because I'm so different from everybody. And people, they think I'm insane and that I'm hearing voices and hallucinating. And I don't know I don't have any guy friends. And I don't know how to relate to girls either. And so what should I do? I'm just very different from the other kids. And I don't have anything in common with any of them. And Sterling said, well, actually, I noticed that about you right away, that you are quite different and unique. And I bet I know something about you. And Peter said, well, what's that? He said, I bet you go around noticing all the time what's different about you and other people. Peter said, well, how did you know that? That's brilliant. And I'm thinking, well, you just told him, Dodo. He's just reflecting back what Peter had said to him. And then Sterling said, and I know something else about you, too. Peter said, well, what's that? And then Sterling said, I bet you never bother to notice what you do have in common with people. And Peter said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, like you and I, we have this interest in religion. And when we talk about religion, we have a tremendous time. And I learned so much from you. It was amazing. And then Peter said, wow, you're right. I never thought of that. How could I find what I have in common with some really horny girls? and so then they started rapping about that for another 20 minutes or so. It brought us up to the end of the session. I was completely shut out of the session. And then Peter looked at me and he seemed all relaxed and he didn't seem to be hallucinating or, acting or saying, crazy things, not disrespectfully, but psychotic things, hallucinations. And he says, Dr. Burns, this is by far the best session we've ever had. Will Sterling be with us next week? And I said, oh, yes, he's going to be here for the whole month. He'll be for every session. I can guarantee that. And then it was like that with the next patient, was also very severe. And I said, Sterling, what would be the British approach? And all of a sudden, the patient had calmed down, was eating out of Sterling's hand. And and then at the end of the second session, I said, Sterling, I'm seeing 70 hours a week of patients, nonstop, but back to back every day. And I'm wondering if you'd like to join me for the entire month with all of those sessions. And he said, oh, I would love that. And we spent that month together. And it was, you know, one of the maybe the best month, one of the best months of my career. And it was such a joy working with him. But he didn't know anything, and so I was the expert and I was teaching him all these tremendous cognitive therapy techniques, externalization of voices, downward arrow, feared fantasy, all these very valuable techniques. But I was telling myself, Sterling has something that I don't have. And he has the gift of developing warm relationships. And if I could combine that with all these technical skills that I have, it would be dynamite.
Mhm.
And so I started watching what Sterling was doing, and I thought if I would give names to what he's doing, then I could teach myself and maybe teach my students. And that's what gave birth to what I now call the 5 secrets of effective communication.
You might be wondering what the Feeling Great app is. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm a licensed therapist and one of the designers of the Feeling Great app. And the Feeling Great app is an AI chat tool that's meant to not just help you feel a little bit better, not just help you find relief, but truly feel great. And the methods in the app are developed by the legendary David Burns. And in a very structured and routine way, they're meant to walk you through the exact process that David uses to help his clients feel better. And to our surprise, the app has been incredibly effective. You might wonder, have people gotten 20% better, 30% better, 40% better? No. Believe it or not, in one single 1.5 hour chat session, people have actually seen a 70% improvement on average in their negative mood. So if you'd like to feel great, and gosh, would we ever love that to you, download our app in the App Store today.
And for example, he was using what I call the disarming technique. He always found truth in what the patient was saying, even if it was off. But there was always some beautiful truth within it. Like when I heard the patient say, I saw John the Baptist, I was thinking, give me an effing break. You did not see John the Baptist. You're hallucinating. You have mental illness, schizophrenia, and you need to take the medications I'm prescribing. And that's kind of a down message. And it's not going to sell well to people who are hurting. And what Sterling said is, you're right. There's a tremendous spiritual crisis in the world. And we can even see it today, 50 years later, that the world is in spiritual crisis. And it's a battle between hatred and love. And, and tell me you're thinking about it, Peter. And all of a sudden, it formed a melting and a connecting as one. And then within that context, the patient was very responsive to the various techniques we had to help him change the way he thinks, help him change the way he talks to the other kids, and that type of thing. And also, he used a lot of inquiry. Tell me more about that. He would use what I now call thought and feeling empathy, paraphrasing what Peter said. You say you saw John the Baptist, and that sounds awfully important. And then the minister got jealous. That sounds like enough to piss anybody off. Tell me more about how you've been feeling and what that meant to you. So he was opening the patient up and welcoming what the patient was saying, and then using I feel statements, sharing his feelings to say things like, I'm so sad that you got kicked out of the Episcopal Church when there was so much of importance for you to learn there. And I can imagine how hurt and lonely you must be feeling, and tell me about that. And so he was showing himself as human, rather than as I was trained to hide my feelings and never express feelings toward a patient. But I was supposed to be some kind of expert, high and mighty, and that doesn't generate feelings of warmth. And then finally in inquiry, say, tell me more about that. I want to hear how you're feeling, and so forth. And those are the 5 secrets of effective communication. And it turned into it changed my life. and it can change your life too. And so we're going to have a whole series on the 5 secrets of effective communication dedicated to you, Sterling Morey. And I hadn't seen him for 40 years.
Mhm.
And he came back into my life not long ago because of the internet, Zoom. And he was just the same as he's ever been. And we actually treated someone together and put that as a podcast. And he was doing the same thing, except now he's one of the top psychiatrists in Europe, in Britain. But he's still, expressing caring for people and delicately asking people to open up. And he was like a Rembrandt or Mozart. He like relationships to him was like music. And so this series, Sterling, you changed my life, and I learned so much from you. And now I'm hopeful to share this with many of our fans. And also, if you're interested, we're even going to have a new love bot for you. Yes, a love bot. Can a computer, as opposed to a human being, teach us how to love one another? And the answer is yes. We'll show you how to try out this new love bot. But remember, if you're serious, what I have to teach you is going to be life changing. It's not in a gimmicky way like what you hear on the internet. It's going to take some work. But if you want to learn how to get closer to people, how to get more love in your life, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with criticism, we have not some good stuff for you, but some unbelievable stuff for you, as well as training techniques that will show you how to learn these things so you can implement them in your life in real time. So that's it for today. We love you all and hope you come back but dedicate a chunk of time if you want to learn how to get more love in your life. It's not easy like the way the love gurus teach it. They're full of shit, as I've so often said. They just try to teach gimmicks. What I'm going to teach you is learnable, but it's challenging, and it will require the death of yourself and a completely different philosophy of relationships. But if I learned it, you can learn it too, because I started from a pretty low level and had to teach myself every little thing to understand it. And boy, it's been mind blowing for me.